You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Well, hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda, and this is episode 119 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. I have two bourbon-soaked stories for y'all today about a great bunny escape and a cool kid's Christmas party. But first, let's fill up those glasses for a toast. Cheers, y'all. Today, I am drinking Redemption Rye whiskey, and it clocks in at 95% rye and 5% malted barley. And if that mash bill sounds familiar, it is because it is shared by Bulleit Rye. Now, Bulleit is aged a little bit longer, so that makes the Redemption Rye whiskey a little bit more wily, a little untamed. And that's what I like about it. I have to say, I am all about the Redemption line this year. I loved their wheated whiskey. I love their high rye bourbon. And this rye whiskey is just as good. You take that first sip and you are hit right up front with that wonderful spice, full of cinnamon and a little bit of mint. And it has that wonderful leathery taste that I absolutely love in a winter cocktail. And here's the beauty of this rye. You can drink it however you like. I've got mine straight up, but it's lovely on the rocks. And at just $30 a bottle, you're not going to mind mixing this. And I'll tell you, it is outstanding in a Manhattan. Really, this is just a great rye to enhance your holidays a little bit. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time getting into the true spirit of the holiday. And it doesn't help things that I am reading absolutely asinine articles online about how to do things like fight fairly with your partner. At the time, I couldn't help but get all self-righteous and eye-rolly over the whole thing, because my guy and I, we really don't fight. It's just not the way we operate. But every so often, particularly around the holidays, we're put in a situation where the absolute limits of our patience and tolerance are tested, and at least one of us won't rise to the occasion. Oh, who am I kidding? That would be me. I'm always the Grinch. And knowing this, I filed that article away in the depths of my little hamster brain, thinking that perhaps one day it would come in handy. I just didn't expect to have to recall it so soon. You see, my guy and I were recently asked to pet sit. The people who asked us aren't exactly close friends of ours. In fact, they're really more on the outer fringes of our friend circle. So I wasn't thrilled when my guy announced that we would be doing them a favor. You know, in the spirit of the giving season. He is far nicer than I am in many respects, even when it means driving an hour out of town to look in on, now wait for this, a pet bunny rabbit. I really don't see the appeal of keeping a bunny as a pet. And I'm sure plenty of y'all will disagree and tell me how sweet and loving bunnies are. And good for you and your little bunnies. But after spending time with this one, I'm going to have to disagree. This was not a bunny of the sweet or loving variety. This bunny was a jerk. A mean, nimble little jerk. I'm always kind of amazed at how oblivious some pet owners are of the true nature of their beloved animals. Now, I'm guilty of it too, I know this. I told my guy when we met that my cat was the most awesome creature in the world, and then it took 9 years for her to warm up to him. According to our friends, Bunny Carlos, that's the rabbit's super clever name, well, he's an adorable little critter who lives inside a specially made bunny condo. He would require a clean litter box and fresh hay, veggies, water, and he would need to go for a walk. I look at my guy. A walk? The bunny takes walks? So my guy scans the email that he's been sent outlining the care plan for Bunny Carlos. It was a 3-page email, making it seem more like the instructions on how to assemble a dresser from IKEA than look after a stupid rabbit. My guy nods. It would be too cold to take him outside, so we were supposed to put Bunny Carlos on his very own leash and take him for a couple of laps around the first floor. I'm tempted to tell my guy to just have fun with all that, and I'd return to the comforting warmth I get from the lump of coal I call a heart. Because I know deep in my soul that this is not going to end well for anyone. We get to our friend's house the next morning, and as promised, Bunny Carlos is peering at us from the second level of his 3-story home. It's outfitted with tubs of hay and other crap, as well as what our friends called enrichment, which is really just an obnoxious way to describe chopped up paper towel tubes and balls of sticks. And Bunny Carlos does not look overjoyed to see us. My guy loves all animals, he really does, even the ones that I say make nice coats. So we've agreed that it is up to him to try to coax the rabbit out of his posh little condo and onto his bunny leash. He cautiously goes to the wire door and starts cooing to the suspicious rabbit. "Hey there, little buddy. Who wants to go for a walk?" I don't really know much about rabbits, or their vision, or how they react to change, so all I can really comment on is this bunny, who took one look at my guy's face, decided he did not like it, then bared his pointy little bunny teeth, channeled his inner honey badger, and then took a chunk right out of my guy's hand. My guy yanks his hand out of the cage and lets loose a dramatic stream of profanities. Bunny Carlos does not look impressed. Now it's here where my guy and I hit one of those relationship crossroads. And when you're in the moment, you can see it plain as day. There's the bright, well-lit path meant for mature, reasonable people. And then there's that other path. The less bright path that's lined with dead trees and crows. And I'm here to tell you that pulling out your phone and quizzing Siri on whether or not bunnies carry rabies is definitely not the right path to take. My guy stares at me for several very long seconds, and then suggests that if I am so smart, perhaps I should attempt to pull the bunny from his cage myself. This is about as close as my guy and I get to fighting. And it's never so much fighting as it is a sarcastic challenge of ability. Neither of us likes to admit to being wrong or incapable, and we can go for hours like Annie Oakley and Frank Butler, in an elaborate, no you can't, yes I can number. And usually the garage is burning behind us. Or in this case, there's a bunny twitching his nose mockingly. In the heat of this particular moment, I'm reminded of that article I had read about how to fight like a decent human being. So I think, well, what the hell? Let's take some of these tips for a spin. The first tip was to recognize that no one is perfect. Really? I may not be perfect, but I was pretty damn sure I could pull a bunny out of a cage. Magicians have been pulling them out of hats for centuries. How hard could it be? I slip on my leather gloves to shield myself from bunny rabies, and I wrestled that little fluffy monster out of his cage without a problem. And once I had that little guy in my hands, he didn't seem so bad. I scratch his head and he burrows into my hands and we bond. And I look at my guy with a triumphant smile. You see? No problem. Well, I figure that Bunny Carlos and I are simpatico now. So I put him on the ground while I collect his leash. And that, y'all, was a mistake. That fuzzy little rodent saw a chance for escape and he took it. He shot across the floor, took a left turn at Albuquerque, and was gone before my guy or I could blink. I am stunned. The floor is practically smoking, that thing took off so fast. What the hell just happened? I asked my guy. And him, helpful to a fault, responds, "You lost the bunny." I lost the bunny? I lost the bunny? We wouldn't be dealing with this situation at all if my guy had just politely lied to our friends to get us out of bunny duty like any normal person would have done. So I failed to see how this was my fault. I am fuming. My guy and I have locked eyes. Neither of us wants to budge on fault. So I take a couple of deep breaths, and I let my mind return to that Fair Fight article. And I mentally scan it for something to diffuse the situation. Its big nugget of genius is to find common ground. Common ground? My guy and I were both so annoyed that the only common ground I could see any of us sharing, Bunny included, was a cemetery plot. After that, the article suggests not attempting to read your partner's mind. Oh, please. After 10 years with my guy, I can interpret even his most subtle of movements. And let me tell you, there was nothing subtle about his narrowed eyes or scowl. What would have been more useful would be to read that damn bunny's mind, because that ass monster was gone. That left us in the awkward position of needing to crawl through the underbelly of our friend's home in an unfortunate bunny search party. Under normal circumstances, I am not a snoop. I'm not the kind of person who will peek in someone's medicine cabinet or drawers, although I do understand the appeal. And I am always prepared for people to do just that when they visit us. I'll leave little sample-sized tubes of lube among the packets of hotel soap, and we'll fill empty Vicodin prescription bottles to the brim with Pez just to see if anyone notices. But it is entirely something else to be rooting around in the dark recesses of a home, poking around in the very places that collect all of our dark secrets. I will say that considering the many piles of poo pellets I found under chairs, I was kind of relieved that this obviously wasn't Bunny Carlos's first great escape. My guy and I are crawling on our hands and knees, trying our best to make bunny noises, and calling out the damn bunny's name as if it's actually going to perk up and say, "Yes, you called?" I'm struck then by what is finally a decent bit of advice from that Fair Fight article. Now, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but it essentially recommended just shutting the hell up and listening. Which I say to my guy. So we pause. And aside from the buzzing of our mutual annoyance, there is only one sound in the room. Chewing. It's coming from behind the Christmas tree. We quietly inch closer and peer through the branches of the Christmas tree. And what do you know? It's a Christmas miracle. There's Bunny Carlos, planted smack in the middle of a manger, and merrily chewing his way through a cardboard nativity scene. He didn't seem especially inclined to give up the baby Jesus, and considering the chunk he took out of my guy's hand earlier, we weren't inclined to force the issue. Instead, we collected them both and returned Bunny Carlos to his condo. The nativity scene was destroyed. And I couldn't help but think that that crafty little bunny rabbit had planned the whole attack from the beginning. And you gotta wonder who's the bigger Grinch here. We knew we couldn't just leave that mess for our friends to find, but we also knew that there was absolutely no reasonable way to explain what had happened without at least the buffer of a few cocktails. So I grabbed a pen and wrote out a note for our friends that I signed the bunny's name to. It read, "Dear owners, I'm sorry I ate your baby Jesus." I show it to my guy, who says, "I couldn't have written it any better myself." And I know that once again, he and I are on even ground. And now I am raising up my glass and toasting to Bunny Carlos, who, by the way, is doing just fine. As for his owners, well, let's just say they won't be asking us to pet sit anytime soon, and I am just fine with that. Cheers, y'all. Ah, this rye. Oh, it is so good. So leathery. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it really does have this wonderful sort of old bookstore flavor to it. I love it. Now, this is going to sound like a little bit of a stretch, but you got to bear with me for a moment here. That experience with the bunny actually kind of reminded me of a Christmas party that I attended a long time ago. The party itself was the very first cool kids Christmas party I had ever been to. I don't remember who exactly was hosting the party, but it was held in this very swanky loft in downtown Chicago, and the guest list was a veritable who's who of local celebrities. I suppose I should point out that I wasn't exactly invited to the party. But one of my editors was, and when he couldn't go, I begged him for the invite. This was back when I was a rock writer. It was in my senior year of college, and I was just a few months away from moving to Los Angeles. So I saw this party as my opportunity to make dazzling friendships that would set the foundation for my career. And oh, I could just see my future. There I'd be, hosting my own show on MTV and interviewing one of the people who happened to attend the party with me. We'd be all chummy and familiar and laughing over some shared experience from that Christmas party, when said celebrity would look at me fondly and say, "Oh, Juliette, you were the toast of the night." Clearly, my delusions of grandeur knew no bounds. My editor was happy to hand over his invite, with the codicil that I come back with material for a lifestyle article. That was fair enough. Now, my next step really should have been doing some research. Find out who was hosting the party, who would be attending, treat it like the actual writing assignment that it was. Instead, I used my questionable brain power to figure out what to wear. The 90s were not an especially good time for fashion. I suppose every decade has its own fashion flaws, but the 90s just stand out to me as seriously unfortunate and just confoundingly indecisive. Like the winning outfit I chose for my first grown-up Christmas party. A glittery pinstripe baby doll dress paired with over-the-knee tights and chunky Mary Jane platform heels. I arrived at that party looking like something the Spice Girls had coughed up. I stood at the threshold of the loft with all of the right pieces in all of the right places and feeling glamorous and ready to conquer the world. I'm not sure what I expected to happen next. It's not like there were trumpeters there to herald my arrival. But as I scanned the room and took in all of my chic surroundings, I noticed that not one single head turned in my direction. And I was hit with a devastating realization. No one cared that I was there. I didn't know a single person in that room. Oh, I recognized people all right, but in all of my glorious fantasies of familiarity and friendship, not once did I ever stop to consider just how I was going to make all of that happen. And that is precisely when panic set in. Because the reality was, I had no clue how to talk to these strangers. I mean, it was one thing to go into an interview. There I would be expected, and I'd be prepared with a notebook full of questions. But this party was next-level socialization. I mean, up to that point, the most glamorous function I had attended was an awards banquet at college. And there, I'd managed to offend not one but 3 wealthy alumni donors by suggesting that their honorary doctorates were about as useful as Monopoly money. So why I ever thought I would come away from this shindig with someone like Jenny McCarthy as my new BFF is beyond me. Because y'all, the truth is, I'm not a cool kid. I have never been a cool kid. But goddammit, I had made my way into the cool party, and I was going to make the most of it. So I sucked up all of my panic and fright, and I headed to the one place where I felt most comfortable. The cheese tray. I bet you thought I was going to say the bar, didn't you? Oh, I had a cocktail all right, but I knew full well that I had to take it easy on the booze. I mean, this wasn't some frat party after all. But cheese was safe. Cheese is social. And the spread was positioned just close enough to the action of the party that I could unobtrusively listen in on conversations and plan my next move. I stood alone at that cheese tray for more than an hour, nervously stuffing my face and watching as members of the Chicago Bulls, local politicians, and assorted other Chicago royalty conversed near me. And I never once felt as though I had anything remotely useful or intelligent to contribute. The whole world was swirling around me in a Technicolor Christmas party dream, and the only thing I felt remotely qualified to do was eat cheese. I didn't even realize how intimate I had become with the cheese until the caterer stopped by the table. He surveys the large silver tray, which by then was mostly barren, save for a few hunks of rind and skid marks left by an especially oily cheddar. And then he saw me, awkwardly positioned in front of it, and gnawing on the decorative parsley. Plague of locusts couldn't have done as much damage to that tray as I had. The caterer looks at me and he says, "Did you eat all of the cheese?" He sounds both impressed and horrified, as if putting back several pounds of cheese was some remarkable feat of inhuman endurance. Really, it was just a tragic display of my own blundering lack of social grace. I lick my lips nervously, tasting a small smear of gorgonzola that I'd missed, and I denied everything. Of course I hadn't eaten all of the cheese. What kind of lonely lunatic would do that? I quickly walk away, and I am mercilessly berating myself the whole time. I had been so excited about attending this stupid party, about making connections and preparing myself for the social whirlwind that I envisioned Los Angeles to be, and the only thing I'd managed to do so far was consume an entire party's worth of cheese. Well, that's it. I gave myself an ultimatum. I was either going to walk up to a group of people and start talking with them, or I was going to go home. What I needed to do was find other wallflowers like me. Every party has them, you just have to look. Beyond all the baggy, awful 90s suits and sequins and stilettos, way off to the side, I spot them. Two guys who clearly did not appear to fit into the glamorous mix. The one was wearing an every-color sweater with pleated Z Cavarici pants. The other guy looked a little bit like the accountant love child of Dan Aykroyd and Hunter S. Thompson. As I approached, I overheard them talking about music, and I said a silent prayer of thanks to the party gods because I knew these are my people. They were discussing the new Smashing Pumpkins album, something which I had a very definitive opinion on, and I was able to use that to easily insert myself into their conversation. I may not be able to talk about sports or politics with any real authority, but goddammit, I can hold my own in a discussion about music. And all was going great for about 5 minutes. And then the conversation shifted to upcoming concerts. There were a bunch of bands coming to town over the next couple of months, and I expressed my interest in going to see Cheap Trick. Now, I have never really been a huge Cheap Trick fan, and really the late 80s and early 90s weren't exactly kind to them. But people had been telling me for years that seeing the band live was really the best way to appreciate what they do. So I asked my two new friends, what do you think? Is it worth it to see Cheap Trick? Or should I just wait for Paul McCartney to come to town so I can see an actual Beatle? The guy with the Cavarici pants starts laughing enthusiastically, which I take to mean he appreciated my snarky little joke. And I'm thinking, yes, finally! It may have taken 2 hours and 10 pounds of cheese, but now I have found my groove at this party. But then I look at the other guy, the one with the mustache and button-down shirt and loose tie, and I see that he isn't nearly as tickled by my quip. So I give him a lighthearted apology and I say, "Oh, well, you must be a Cheap Trick fan." This makes Cavarici Pants laugh so hard he begins quietly snorting. Mustache Guy just gives me a wan sort of smile and says, "Yeah, I've dug the band for quite some time." He then excuses himself, leaving me alone with Cavarici Pants, who is wiping a combination of snot and tears from his face with a cocktail napkin. For a minute, it looks as though he's debating on whether or not to let me in on the joke, whatever it is. But he sees the genuinely confused look that I have, which quite honestly was hovering a blink or two away from tears, so he takes pity on me. "That was Bun E. Carlos," he says. I look at him blankly. I still don't get the joke. Cavarici Pants sighs then and delivers a 6-word punchline so mortifying. To this day, I can still see it trailing in the air behind me like a stink bomb. He's the drummer of Cheap Trick. Cavarici Pants pats me on the head then as though I'm a kitten who hasn't quite gotten the hang of her litter box yet, and then he wanders away, still laughing to himself. Oh, y'all, I don't even have words for what I felt. All I know is I just wanted to die. How could I have not known who I was talking to? I mean, sure, he looked like a regular guy, but it was my fucking job as a rock writer to be able to pick the one musician out of a lineup. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at this party feeling like just an absolute asshole. I wanted to throw myself from the high-rise windows and just let a street sweeper push my lifeless body into the Chicago River. Better that than the new future I saw for myself. I wouldn't be hosting MTV. I wouldn't be interviewing people on the red carpet. I'd be a seat filler. And someday I would wind up at the Grammy Awards and someone from the party would be sitting next to me. Probably Rick Nielsen or Robin Zander. They would remember me as that girl who ate all of the cheese, and my brilliant response would be asking, "And you are?" Y'all, it would seem my oblivion also knows no bounds. That was my cue to leave. I knew I had a hell of a lot of work to do, personally and professionally, before I would be ready to attend another cool kid party. I did have one small consolation, and it was this thought that kept me from taking that plunge into the Chicago River. I wasn't sure how or when, but I knew that one day, at the very least, this whole experience would make one very fun story, even if it was at my own expense. And now, y'all, I am raising up my glass, and I am toasting to everyone who does their homework. Cheers, y'all. Well, y'all, it is time for me to head on out and find myself some more bourbon and some more trouble to get into. Head on over to theunwritablерant.com. There you will find all of the back episodes of my podcast, and you can find where to find me on social media. Twitter is where I spend most of my time, so I would suggest hitting me up on there if you ever want to chat or share any bourbon or whiskey recommendations. Hope you all find some holiday cheer this week. As for me, well, I will be back next week to chat with y'all again. Hope you have a good one. Cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablерant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. You can hear new episodes of The Unwritable Rant on radiovegas.rocks every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern and on IPMNation.com on Saturdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and hear best of episodes every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter at Morning Neurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away, let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton relay. Hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo, sweet as taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.